Hello and welcome to this webcast from Food Service Consultant Society International, FCSI. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Jones, Editorial Director of Progressive Content and FCSI's Food Service Consultant magazine, as you can see here. Many thanks for joining us today for this webcast, which is addressing the future of food service in Asia Pacific and Australasia. Having produced 3 previous webcasts on the EMEA, Latin America and North America regions, this is the 4th and final webcast in the series, looking at how the global food service sector is recovering from the impact of COVID-19 and preparing to face what is undoubtedly a bit of an uncertain future. This particular webcast is kindly supported by our good friends at Woodstone. That's woodstone-corp.com. Many thanks to them for their kind support. We have viewers today from across the Asia Pacific region, with China, Hong Kong, India, the Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand, as well as registrants from the UK, Belgium, Italy, Germany, Sweden, Switzerland, Mexico and the US. So our audience today is a very eclectic mix of food service consultants, as you'd expect, but also operators, food producers, packaging professionals, dealers, distributors and equipment manufacturers. Our focus is, of course, on Asia Pacific, a huge region geographically that is frankly so diverse culturally from country to country that it can be very hard to draw conclusions and find similarities in terms of food service trends, but we will do our best today and also showcase some fascinating examples of operators in the region who are doing very innovative things to emerge from the pandemic in a robust way. The webinar will be presented by Global Data's Director of Research and Analysis, Sumit Chopra. Sumit is dialing in from Hyderabad, India. I'll shortly hand over to Sumit, who will be presenting for approximately 30 minutes, and then he will be able to take some questions at the end of the session. You can submit questions to Sumit during his presentation using the questions column on this platform. I can then put those questions to Sumit at the end of his presentation. So I would request that those questions are not too niche, but if they are about broad opportunities, potential, and challenges for the food service sector in Asia Pacific, Sumit will be very happy to answer those at the end of the session. Please, throughout this webcast, please also use the chat function on this platform to tell us where you're dialing in from. Otherwise, for now, let's focus on the webcast and Asia Pacific, and let me hand it over to Sumit Chopra. Thank you, Sumit.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the introduction. And depending on from where all you're joining, a very good morning, good afternoon, and in fact, good evening. And thanks to all of you to join this session. Let me just quickly start the share screen. 1 second. I hope everyone can see the slide pack, and I hope, Michael, you can, right? So perfect. So in today's session, what we will look at is what are the typical evolving and emerging trends and inspirations which are coming out of the food service industry during the era of COVID. Just to set the agenda, as a starting point, I'll share some opening thoughts, what's happening in this changing world, followed by the outlook on Asia Pacific. Here we will look at the key aspect about market data and generally how the market is growing, which are the countries which are impacted the most, both Asia Pacific and also some examples from a global point of view. And in the next section, we'll talk about how the industries, consumers are getting, are changing with respect to the new innovation and inspiration. And finally, some thoughts at the end. As Michael was saying, you can obviously put all your questions into the question mark box. We will look at the end, but if there are any questions we can't answer on this session, then absolutely reach out to me. My email address and my contact details are at the end. And also in case if you do need a copy of the report, absolutely again email it to me. So before we do a deep dive on the topic, I think it's important to acknowledge the COVID-19 has impacted the global food service industry quite massively. But if we just start looking what has happened during COVID in terms of numbers, if you look at it as of now, the estimates are almost 8 million deaths, close to 27 million confirmed cases. Obviously, the recovery has started. Certain countries are getting out of this whole COVID mode. The recovery rates are much faster, so there is an optimism for sure. But what does that mean is it has resulted in a massive change in business models, right, across the board. uh, how companies are connecting to consumers, both on the F&B side as well as on the operator side, is changing quite rapidly. There will be a big transformation in terms of what are the companies and who are the companies which are left or survive through this pandemic. So again, the key point be both companies and operators and brands really need to align themselves to this rapidly changing business model. That is the most important thing. One second. Sorry. Uh, yeah, because I think there was I was seeing a stream. Okay. Now, what it means for a food service Asia Pacific point of view, if we really look at, there are three, four key takeaways. What it means in terms of the various factors which are impacting the changes in the consumer behavior. The first one is lockdown and social distancing measure. Now, I think that's pretty applicable across all region, whether it is North America, whether it is Europe, whether it is Asia Pacific. That's a standalone factor: lockdown and social distancing. The second most important factor which is impacting the consumer behavior is the hygiene practices. Now, I would say probably for Asia Pacific, this is a big trend, right? If you look at North America and Europe, I would say in terms of hygiene and sanitization, the infrastructure probably was there. Obviously, there were some gaps, and obviously they will get addressed, but it was pretty robust. But when you look at Asia Pacific, you look at markets like Vietnam, Philippines, India, China, in terms of hygiene, in terms of sanitization, in terms of health, these were growing trends. They were the ones which were the most important one, but they were not the strongest one, and the infrastructure was not there to support them. Now that has changed. The whole consumer attention and importance on these two, three key areas: hygiene, health, sanitization, has grown tremendously over the last 6 7 months. I would say probably we have the amount of attention these trends are getting now, we would have taken 5 6 years, especially in certain markets like India, Vietnam, China, and so on. The next big fear is obviously getting COVID. Now that obviously going to remain unless until we get through the vaccine. Obviously, another big change, especially for Asia Pacific, is the increased time on digital platforms. Now, if we really look at it, the amount of time we're spending on Zoom, the time of we're spending on social media platform, that has increased quite drastically over the last 6 months. It was already very high, especially in some Asia Pacific market, but this has increased quite considerably, and I expect this to continue increasing. And then uncertainty, both for the firms and consumers. So there are obviously salary and job losses, and that is something which both consumer and companies are still grappling and adjusting with. If we really look at it, what it means in terms of meal occasions or eating outside as a pattern, we could clearly see through global data survey, and this is based on the global data survey. If you look at from a meal occasion point of view, 46% people or 46% consumers are saying that they will not eat breakfast outside the home. So they will start eating less frequently outside the home. So if you look at breakfast, 46%. If you look at lunch, 56%. If you look at dinner, 57%, eating less frequently outside than before. So that's a big change. Now that is true for Asia Pacific, and that's true for the global market. So that's something which companies will have to adopt. Now, I think if we really look at it, what does it mean in terms of moving forward? So COVID-19, as we all agree, has been a deep shock to the economies and consumers worldwide, uh, which is posing a serious challenge to the way things have been done before, which what we really used to classify as the normal, but that normal has shifted and COVID has literally transformed it. How we shop, how we eat will completely change. If we look at in terms of Asia, a very large region in terms of the population base, the number of dining occasions outside of the home will go down. Now that might change over the next 2 3 years, but at least for the next foreseeable future, which is probably I would say 12 to 24 months, the dining occasions will go down. There will be a massive boom in terms of online deliveries. There'll be a massive boom in terms of virtual kitchens. So again, a transformation. So these things will be very new. But the key thing will be the recovering from these devastating impact of this virus. Food service industry will have to devise new transformation strategy, and what it means is look at technology as one major area, which could be automation, contactless delivery, contactless servicing. Again, these things will become a lot more important, and the mantra will be think what you need to do now, think what you do need to do next, and think what you need to do beyond to secure the future. If you really look at some of the classic examples, and we talked about health, sanitization as a big theme. Now, some of the companies have already started looking at it. So, for example, Starbucks is targeting the eco-conscious consumers by rolling out plant-based offering in selected markets across Asia. Then, if you really look at Starbucks Thailand, has launched its first self-service machine with full customizable capabilities and digitized payment options. So, again, contactless and plant-based are the themes there. Again, a very interesting example of outdoor delivery robot services in Korea. So they introduced Bemin, which is an outdoor delivery robot service that allows delivery robots to come and go outdoor between restaurants and apartments to deliver food. Now that's very unique, and it's also on the similar lines of using technologies like drone and automatic robots and so on. So again, looking at from a Asia Pacific point of view. Again, virtual kitchen and virtual bars are gaining popularity. So for example, Asahi Breweries in Japan hosted a virtual bar event with almost 1,000 people, basically to encourage virtual drinking and dining events. Now this happened when Japan started putting more restrictions again very recently in terms of the lockdown. What it against the key point being again here is both operators and brands can do a lot to connect to the consumer in the new digital world. You don't really need to be an operator itself only. You can also be a brand, in this case Asahi, to do something like this, which is a virtual drinking and a dining event. Now, if you look at what it means in terms of market data in terms of Asia Pacific. So if you look at in terms of the market size, Asia Pacific is one of the largest region in terms of the size of the market. What it means in terms of an impact, Asia will be the most impacted region, almost 380 billion plus in terms of sales loss. In terms of percentage share of the global market, North America will be the highest with almost 34% loss in terms of the share of the market. I would say this loss or this pain point will continue for the next 12 to 24 months. Having said that, it's a rapidly changing environment. So with the vaccine coming in, with new things coming in, the bounce back could be a lot faster than compared to what we're even forecasting right now. All our forecast, all our projections are based on what we're seeing as of today. But tomorrow or in the next 2-3 months, if we see a new vaccine coming up, new technology coming up, which can help in revamping the food service industry, then the projections and the forecast will also change. If you really look at it in terms of start comparing various regions, you can see what it means by various channels, and you would notice that between in this slide, channels like pubs and bars, channels like restaurants are massively impacted in a market like China and India, and for that fact Japan, Korea, and so on, which are heavily dominated by QSRs, the number of QSRs they have. So the impact is quite evident. But as I said again, over the next 12 to 24 months, the key point will be how these outlets, how these companies adapt and innovate. And also on the same side, if we see any positive news coming out in terms of the healthcare side from a vaccine point of view, which could also lead to a massive revamp or a bounce back. Now, if you really look at again this in context of various global countries, what it means from a country impact point of view, countries like China, Japan, and India, from an Asia Pacific point of view, the biggest markets which are impacted. China, in fact, of the total loss in the food service industry for Asia, accounts for almost 48% in terms of the regional loss share. Again, if you look at it from a country context point of view, again, if you look at Asia, as I said again, China really holds the number, almost close to 48 billion in terms of loss. But again, what we have seen over the last couple of months, the industry is started to bounce back in China, but again, a long way to go before we get closer to the number what they were achieving last year. But as you could see, again, the impact to a market like Japan and impact to a market like India is the maximum. If you look at from an Australasia point of view, again, we could clearly see Australia obviously is the most important one, and New Zealand relatively being a smaller market, not the most impacted, but yes, there is an impact for sure in terms of the overall size of the market. Now, what it means is if you really look at it in terms of mitigation strategy, there are three key major areas what we can look at it. What's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months, what can happen in the next 1 to 3 years, and what can happen in the next 3 to 5 years. I think over the next 6 to 12 months, we would have obviously realized in Asia Pacific, restaurant need to start focusing more towards takeaway, partnering through online aggregators. This will be true even for FSRs, even true for fine dining restaurants. We've already seen in Asia your leading branded hotel chains. So, for example, chains like Sheraton, chains like Hilton have started doing takeaways and deliveries. So that's a big transformation. They were never used to do that, and this will continue for the next 12 months. Companies will look at cutting down costs. Advertising will take its own new meaning. So again, a lot of advertising can happen through social media, which might reduce the cost. So the TV advertisements or the billboards potentially not needed, at least for the next 6 to 12 months, depending upon market to market. You need to build a long-term strategy in terms of connecting to consumers. So can you bring sanitization health to the core principle? So again, build a long-term reputational gains. Again, engage with consumers and educate. So I would say engagement and education will go hand in hand. Restaurants can start engaging consumers through social media, but on the same side, they can start educating the consumers about how the recipes are made, what they're doing locally in terms of sourcing the materials, how they're maintaining sanitization in their restaurants. Again, connecting and educating the consumer together. I would say 6 to 12 months, that could be the strategy. Again, between 1 to 3 years, focus on technology will be a lot more important. Contact-free delivery options will gain importance. Adoption, expanding food safety, sanitization practices will gain a lot of importance. And these things will flow over the next 3 to 5 years. So if you look at from a 3 to 5 years perspective, companies operating in the food service sector should look at automation. Automation will be a big theme in general. And we've already started seeing companies taking a lead onto it. Brands will need to be innovative. And I think more than innovative, need to be agile, because we expect the consumer behavior to constantly and rapidly keep changing over the next 6 to 12 months, or if not more, right? What it really means is, yeah, your menus need to innovate quite drastically. Your services need to innovate quite drastically. Again, to give you an example, if you look at the menus in general over the last prior, let's say 2020, the menus which were available online, especially in some of the Asia Pacific markets, were very limited, right? Very limited what they were serving physically versus what they were serving online. If you look at in the last 6 to 12, in the last 6 months, these menus have evolved quite massively. So pretty much everything which was served on premise is now available to be served online, so you can order pretty much everything. So again, they have evolved in terms of what all they can serve. Various dishes have come into picture. There is a lot more information about ingredient sourcing, which is there on the menus. There is a lot more information about sanitization, health as a topic in terms of how it's been made, what service levels this operator is using. And then at the same side, there are menus which are focused towards only health or eco-conscious consumers, which have come into picture. What it really means is continue remodeling the business and selling experience for consumers worldwide, and more importantly for Asia. Now, as part of the next section, what we will really look at is what are the significant changes which are happening in the industry and how they will evolve over the next 6 to 24 months. So if you look at, there have been significant closures and in terms of food service outlets, in terms of food service restaurants, and those will continue. If you really look at some of the surveys and really look at some of the stats which are coming out of certain markets, if you look at a market like India, for example, there is a stat which says 40% of the restaurants may shut permanently. Now, a word of caution, when we say 40% restaurant, here also means a lot of QSRs. There are a lot of small QSRs which are active in a market like India, true for a market like China, Japan, and so on. And this is where we expect a lot of churn, which will happen over the next 6 to 12 months, especially as we head into year 2021. If you look at, so again, as part of the global data survey, we have been tracking consumer sentiment. So if you look at the sentiment analysis, if you look at the question, how concerned are you about the outbreak of COVID? Now, if you really look at markets like China, you look at markets like Philippines, you look at market like India, there is a lot of concern. But if you look at in terms of economic recovery, how optimistic people are. Now, the interesting part is if you look at it, 41% of consumers in China are concerned about COVID. And that's a pretty reasonable number. If you look at this number, probably 3 months back, this probably would have been around 40, 45 or 60% rather, sorry. But if you look at in terms of economic recovery, China has the maximum optimism in terms of where consumers are saying, okay, we expect the economy to bounce back quite rapidly. And in fact, we are actually already seeing that in terms of the initiatives which is taken by the Chinese government operators and the companies. If you look at on the contrary, if you look at a market like Philippines, 83% people are massively negative about COVID and are concerned about COVID. And at the same side are very, very downbeat onto the economic scenario. Same true for a market like India, almost 70% consumer are concerned about COVID, and at the same side, very pessimistic about the economic recovery, which is around 32% because of the large scale impact. So again, these are the 2-3 things which brands and operators will have to keep in mind: the sentiments, what consumers are going through, and how the economic recovery might happen. Obviously, with every adversity, there comes a new challenge, but it also throws a lot of new opportunities. And I think in case of food service, there are a lot of new opportunities which will come to a lot of operators, and especially to established brands like McDonald's, KFC, Starbucks, Jollibee, Burger King, and so on. I think they might come out stronger out of this over the next 12 to 24 months. Again, if you look at what are the factors which are becoming more important than before in terms of COVID, the biggest one is positive impact on health. So products and services which have a positive impact on health is gaining popularity. How risk-free the product feels is again gaining gaining importance. It aligns with my shopping budget and money constraint. Absolutely understandable with the fact how COVID has transformed the whole consumer behavior and the economic scenario. So again, while developing your promotional strategy, while developing your product strategy, while developing your go-to-market strategy, looking at these top 2-3 areas will be an important one, especially in context of Asia Pacific. As I said, consumer focus on health is growing, and a lot of companies have started doing a smarter thing. So for example, if some of you know Swiggy is one of the leading online food aggregator, food operator, or a delivery platform. They have launched a app which is a very interesting initiative. It's a health hub app, a dedicated health food discovery destination. It's especially targeting to eco-conscious consumer, health-conscious consumer, relevant, and is very relevant to the changing market landscape. So this allows users to discover restaurants and dishes that are shared with nutritional information. So you can literally look at, okay, which are the restaurants which are telling me the macronutrients, which are the restaurants which are telling me calories, which are the restaurants which are telling me all the important information I need to be aware of. Now, I would say this is a very interesting thing. Even taking the COVID angle out for a second, the whole aspect about macronutrients is gaining at a popularity. And if you look at a lot of menus online, still don't do that. They still do not tell a consumer what's the macronutrition information about this dish. And this is exactly what I think probably a lot of operators and a lot of brands or restaurants really need to do and change. You look at again on the very similar example of Swiggy Health Hub app, you look at SoftBank's robotic arm, which plans to bring food service robot Survey, which will act as a sort of a waiter, using its layers of trays to carry out food and drinks, and its 3D cameras and lidar sensors to navigate between the kitchens and the tables. So it's a robotic environment. And similarly, a KT Corporation has introduced a smart robot food server powered by the AI technology, and also using other latest technology at its Seoul franchise. To again provide the contactless delivery. So again, a good example of focusing on areas like risk free health, contactless delivery, hygiene as the big theme. Now, if we really look at it in terms of flavors, so again, there is a lot of increased focus in terms of, as I was saying, there was a lot of increased focus in terms of macronutrients. There's an increased focus towards calories, but there is also an increased focus in terms of sourcing, what types of ingredient are getting used. So, for example, in a push to track ingredients in line with transparency, right? Banyan Tree has, in collaboration with the Thai growers, boutique farm, has developed Orion, the first gourmet organic farm restaurant. So again, focusing on the whole theme about local sourcing, I would say hygiene, I would talk about health as a key topic. So again, if you look at from a global consumer survey point of view, 40% of APEC consumers claim knowing about ingredient and their source is more important than before. And again, really goes back to the same point. Health is becoming a lot more important. Sanitization is becoming a lot more important. And I've been saying to a lot of clients which I've been speaking to, I say two E's. Two E's will become a lot more important over the next 12 to 24 months. Engage and educate. If you're engaging with the consumer, you need to educate them about sourcing, you need to educate them about macronutrients, you need to educate them about how the product is made, and so on. And if you are able to do that successfully, you will be able to build a long-term, stronger relationship and a bond with the consumer. Now, if we really look at it in the next section, what we look at is, okay, what are the things which brands, companies really need to focus on in terms of future outlook? And I think the statement says it all, that don't be afraid of change. I think be afraid of staying the same. Now, as I was saying earlier, let's remember the fact that every adversity brings a new challenge, but more importantly, it provides long-term success opportunity. So the change is inevitable. It was supposed to happen, it will happen. But ultimately, being afraid of a change will be a problem. Now, if you look at what COVID has done, it has created a lot of challenges for both consumers and companies. But at the same side, if you look at from a technology standpoint of view, there are certain positives. So, for example, if you look at market like India, market like Vietnam, look at market like Indonesia, and so on, the technology adoption, which would have taken around 3 to 4 years, has happened over the last 5 months. We've literally jumped the learning curve. We've literally jumped the whole transformation. So a lot more people are using smartphones, a lot more people are using technology like Zoom, a lot more people are using social media and digital platform. If you had a million consumer which you could engage in 2019 in some of these markets, now you have almost double or triple of the consumers you could engage. So again, that's an opportunity. You would have taken almost an year to contact and engage with these consumers. Now you can do it quite fast. And so I would say that's a massive opportunity which companies will see because of COVID. So with all the negative, there is a positive here for companies to remember. If you really look at it, there are lots of interesting, innovative measures and innovative trends which are coming out. As I said, shifts that would have taken 5 years are now occurring in 5 months. I would say the picture you're seeing on the slide screen, we really don't want that at some point. But at the end of the day, you can see how innovatively companies or operators are trying to look at the topic of social distancing. There are a lot of advertisements which companies are doing. There are a lot of social media engagement which companies are doing, which are harping on the point of social distancing in general. But what are companies doing in terms of addressing this? So if you really look at the big trend is location location 2.0. Uh, so there are a lot of innovative measures are being implemented on premise to overcome the social distancing. Where if you look at markets and food halls, that was not an issue to large extent, but yeah, you will have to guide the consumers, need to control the consumers, but especially in restaurants, that was a big issue. So there are interesting examples which are coming out of the Asian market. So if you look at the market like Hong Kong, Starbucks has started doing ways of blocking of distance between seats for dine-in services. Hand sanitizers are getting provided, and this is true for a market like China. This is true for a market like India. You go to a restaurant, the penetration of restaurant having sanitization mechanisms in place is as high as 90%. Probably in 2019 it would have been as low as 15-20%, so that's a big change. If you look at McDonald's, a global example, it involves placing in orders with staff behind perfect glass, again a social distancing measure. We have example from Beijing, which basically covers visible open kitchen, wearing masks, temperature checks. Again, that's gaining popularity in Asia Pacific also. The key point being, if you're able to communicate this to your clientels, if you're able to communicate this to your consumer, you are able to build a lot of trust with them. So trust and transparency go hand in hand. Again, example, and I like this example, the Penguin Eat Shabu, Bangkok, Thailand, a unique plastic divider into each of its locations. So in case if you're dining alone, you still get social distancing. Even if the table is shared by other people, you still can maintain the social distancing. And especially this is true for market like China, Thailand, India, where, a lot of small QSRs are operating, whereby, you're literally sharing table with other consumers. Sorry, 1 second. Again, co-preparation is going to be gaining a popularity. What do we mean by co-preparation? That basically really means providing high quality meal kits. Again, this could be done by various ways. We've already started seeing this happening in certain parts of Asia. I can actually say for India, we are seeing a lot of interest where people are using co-preparation as a method, and there are a lot of brands and smaller brands and operators which are coming into picture. So with the closure of outlets and sanitization of the restaurants being a key concern, uh, chains are generally looking to fulfill two demands. A, can they replicate the dining out experience at home? So basically, co-preparation comes into picture. Can you collaborate with the consumer? And offering solution that provides, family relief from cooking and shopping. So co-preparation helps you addressing that. You can be a partner to the cuisines and the dishes you would like to consume, and at the same side takes you the hurdle of cooking and shopping. Again, if you look at from a global data consumer survey point of view, 35% of global consumers agree that they will spend more time cooking and preparing food at home in future. Now when I say preparing at home for future, that also means there is an opportunity of engaging with these consumers, and we've already started seeing, in fact, over the last 3-4 months, what we have seen is individual people have started coming up with their menus online and also through aggregators. So it's a home cooked food which they're serving to consumers within some of the markets like India. But at the same side, there are a lot of such examples where they're taking feedback from consumers or taking their dishes in mind and providing them deliveries accordingly. Again, example from Japan, Oyoto Holdings, a Japanese comfort food restaurant operator, has partnered with the online seller to develop a meal kit servicing and targeting, the increasing demand for stay at home meals. Again, off-premise will gain popularity, and we did talk about an example of Asahi virtual bar, and again, that wasn't a classic example of engaging the consumer. But when I say virtual kitchen, we will also be talking about the dark kitchens in generally. But in general, virtual kitchens are being leveraged to serve wide range of consumers at a lower cost, and this trend has already started to pick up into 2019. So if you look at model like Central Kitchen, model like Ghost Kitchens, they were gaining popularity. So I would say this is one trend which will gain a lot more pace over the next 20 to 24 months, and probably going to establish itself as a mega trend. It was already a good trend in 2019. It has got a massive push because of COVID over the last 6 months, and I would expect it to continue quite massively over the next 12 to 24 months. A classic example, again, we look at it. Tiffin Labs is a good example, where basically it's a Singaporean food tech firm. Is creating an international network of ghost kitchens, and these are based across location, thousands of location across US, Europe, and Asia. Now, this also reflect the fact when you look at in this whole challenging environment, one of the key questions you may have as a business is, should you expand, right? So in certain cases it might be very tough. You might be very focused towards your own local market needs. You might already be fighting your battles in terms of addressing the local market challenges, but at the same side this might throw some interesting opportunities outside. So again, this Tiffin Lab is an interesting example that looking to expand out of Asia as well to markets like US and Europe during this pandemic. Starbucks China is the first, probably is the first retail brand to establish a dedicated back of house kitchen, Star Kitchens with Alibaba in Hema supermarket in China. So again, a classic example of targeting the virtual kitchen model. But more importantly, it also reflects, the engagement and also the collaboration which various brands can do. In this case, with Alibaba. Again, I said this earlier also, the evolution of menus, that'll be the big thing with all the with all the rapid changes in the food service industry. Menu revolution won't be far away. New menu items focusing on the immune systems, focusing on topics like health in general will gain a lot more importance. And the menu revolution will happen in many ways: convenience, on the go, health. So again, that transformation, again, which in certain markets like India, China, Japan, Korea, if would have taken 5 years or 10 years, probably have happened uh, over the last 6 months. Plant-based protein, for example, the number of restaurants which are serving vegan meals, again, that number is increasing quite massively as the menus are getting transformed, and again, keeping in mind the new consumer demand. I would say, again, across the board, across all themes, I think technology is more like an overarching theme across all major trends we've talked about. When we look at in terms of sanitization, when we look at in terms of contactless deliveries, contactless servicing, technology will play an important role. I would say technology will play an important role in terms of engaging and educating the consumers, obviously. So again, in this classic example, click and collect, McDonald's has created an app enabling consumers to order from restaurant within their mobile device and pick it up via driveway through or a takeaway. Domino's has already done that. Orders can be customized and saved on the app, making reordering fast and convenient. So again, that transformation has already started happening in a lot of other apps as well. So McDonald's is one example. Domino's, you could do that, and other players also. Technology giants like Google will also take an advantage of this whole situation. They are very well placed to target the whole technology bandwagon. And again, they are started to look at entering the food delivery industry in India by partnering with delivery firms. The company has actually, in fact, already started testing the service that will enable users to place food orders directly on google.com. And the whole idea is when you're searching a dish, it can automatically takes you to the restaurant based on the location which is serving a similar dish. So they're using the whole search engine power. And we expect these types of innovation and revolution in generally to only increase over the next couple of years from now on. As I said, again, technology will be at the forefront. Now, drone delivery as an example, and this is one of the examples. The reason I have picked up drone food service delivery, if someone was speaking to me maybe last year in 2019 and said, okay, when do I expect drone delivery to be even a reality for a market like India, I probably would have said, okay, maybe 5-6 years, if not more than that, maybe 10 years. But because of COVID, because of this whole pandemic, again, there is a strong push of contactless delivery and you looking at technologies like drones in terms of delivery. So in fact, in this case, the Civil Aviation Authority has given a note for food startups like Zomato, Swiggy, and Dunzo to start testing these drone delivery services. And again, that's a big change. I didn't see that coming. But now that is happening. It's actually on the table as part of a discussion. Okay, we should look at drone food service delivery. Again, very similar example, autonomous delivery robots. So we saw an example from Korea where the robots were delivering food from a restaurant to the apartments. Similarly, delivery robots or robots servicing as a waiter will gain a lot more popularity. If I correctly remember, there is a restaurant which is opened in China or Hong Kong, which basically is completely served by robots. There is no physical human being involved in the servicing of the food items. So again, technology will play a huge and more important role over the next 24 months or over the next 36 months in terms of transforming how the food service industry behaves. As I said again, all this will lead to the whole change in the meal occasions. This will bring massive opportunities for food service brands and operators. I would say a lot of companies, a lot of operators will be focusing on the fact that, okay, not many people are going to the restaurants, not many people are going to the outlets and various places. But I think the fact is we need to accept this. That's the new normal, and we're only going to change slowly and steadily, and especially if a vaccine comes in over the next 6 to 12 months. But even during this pandemic, even during this adversity, there are interesting opportunities which will come for various brands and operators to target socially conscious promotions. Again, focusing and targeting the whole issue about healthcare, sustainability will gain importance. Repurposed restaurant, more local eateries will evolve. Grocery outlets will start serving food. There'll be a lot of places where basically an operator, like take an example, an operator like Swiggy, an operator like KFC's, they will start delivering foods in terms of grocery items to build more engagement. And we've already started seeing that. If you look at a example like Swiggy, again an example for Asia, till last year they were only servicing food service operators. Starting this year during COVID, they've started serving all the grocery retailers. So again, they have started creating a lot more engagement. The consumers are not only contacting them or engaging with them only for food service orders, but they're also engaging with them especially for non-food service grocery item orders also. Change will expand into meal kits for diners seeking a balance between restaurant flavor and home freshness. So again, meal kits, home cooked food as a concept will gain a lot more important over the next 24 months. Immune boosting menu items will gain important. As I said again, there are classic examples like Swiggy, and there are classic examples where people have started putting sections of specifically targeting a health type, food focused towards diabetic consumer, foods focused towards low sugar consumer, food focused towards people who are looking at immunity boosting, food focused towards people looking at gluten-free food as well. So again, those concepts will gain a lot more importance. Food and alcohol pairing. So again, in Asia, a lot of markets still have restrictions in terms of delivery of food and alcohol together. Now that might change. So for example, again, a classic example in market like India, we never had legally, we never had a choice of food service aggregators like Swiggy, Zomato's to deliver liquor or alcohol to the houses. That is changing. In market like Calcutta, and is a major place in India, Swiggy is actually delivering wines to consumer at home. So again, that transformation could be an interesting one. This could also lead to a lot of food and alcohol pairing, which was not happening earlier, and that can again create a lot of push for new consumers, especially the millennials, especially beer seeking consumers. Again, could be a good good target audience to look at. I think in terms of, if you really look at in terms of conclusion, what did we learn? I think the key part will be tapping into emerging channels and transforming the business model will be crucial for survival. The reality is the pandemic has forced the food service outlets to remodel their operations, rethink their channel strategy, rethink their presence, and be agile. And I think this theme and mantra will continue for the next 3-4 years, if not more. Uh, if you really look at right now, risk aversion is harming on-premise consumption. But if operators are able to highlight, and when I say operators here means outlets are able to highlight the importance of safety, keeping in mind health, sanitization, and social distancing, the purchasing decisions will change. If you look at areas like fine dining, yes, they are facing a lot of pressure right now, but I expect them to bounce back early next year, especially again when we do get a vaccine. That will change the whole mindset. Direct to consumer strategy will gain a lot more importance. Companies and brands need to collaborate, partner with a lot of third party delivery partners to start delivering products. Use of dark kitchens or ghost kitchens will gain a lot more importance, again keeping in the mind that they lead to a reduced operating cost. Financial constraints could be met with interesting concepts like subscription models. So again, subscription models in a market like Asia will gain a popularity. We relatively have low subscription models, and the only models which really exist in Asia to large extent are towards health related cuisines or health related meal models. So again, meal subscription model in terms of breakfast, especially for community which is bachelors, for example, non-married people. Again, that's where subscription models can gain a lot of importance. Um Again, brand also must understand the importance of targeting at-home consumption. Now, I would say, again, when we've been talking about this. The biggest opportunity for all food service operator brands and manufacturer will be building a huge trust with this at home consumer. Now the reality is, because of COVID, you had a x amount of consumer which were going to the restaurant are no longer going to the restaurant. So again, you need to do something to engage them and continue engaging them so they can come back to this to the restaurant in physical way. But there is a huge population which in fact in Asia was going to restaurants anyway quite less and quite less frequently. That's the new audience which you can target. That's the new audience where you can build a lot of brand trust. That's the new audience where you can build a lot of brand engagement. So apart from bringing back the old consumer, even if you're able to bring, let's say, 70% or 60% of those old consumer back to the restaurant over the next months, there is a huge amount of population which was in fact not going to the restaurant as frequently as they should have, which something which you can now target and build a very strong trust on. Why? Because during the COVID, a lot of work from home, people have a huge pressure of cooking on a daily basis. They've started ordering food. So there are consumers who are ordering food once a month earlier, 2019, now ordering once a week. That's your new consumer. Probably they might not go to the restaurant again, but that's the consumer which you can serve at home. So again, a lot of interesting opportunities: technology, health, sanitization, building an engagement, build educating the consumer, looking at the new population of consumers, which I said, which is at home consumer. That could be a great opportunity for the food service operators and brands. And I expect this industry to bounce back quite rapidly as we start hearing some positive news around COVID. And let's remember to keep the fun part alive, to hold a lot of this. Again, a Burger King example of advertising the whole social distancing concept. And again, there are some interesting examples which companies have done, which we've seen in the previous slides, how companies have really engaged with the consumer, keeping the fun portion into mind and building a long-term trust and transparency. As I said, again, we'll pick up the questions now, but in case you have any questions, we'll pick them up now. But if there are any questions which we are not able to answer right as of today, absolutely feel free to email it to us, and obviously we'll get back to you on them. And you can also reach out to me in terms of the copy of the presentation. Thank you so much to all of you for your time. And I think we can actually now pick up all the questions.
Thank you, Sumit. Could I ask you possibly to end your screen share? So it's just the two of us on screen. There we go. Perfect.
Yep.
And we have had lots of questions, lots of interest, a huge amount of requests here to get a copy of your presentation. So I will make those connections, and lots of complimentary comments on how incredibly detailed and insightful your presentation was. And so thank you in the first instance for that. I think we've got about 10 minutes before the presentation ends. So I'm going to go straight to the questions. We've had a few of those, and I've got a bunch to ask you as well. So we'll just rattle through.
Go ahead.
A question from my colleague Tina, who's based in London. She said,
right.
Do you expect to see growth of more growth of the major international food service brands? And I'm assuming it's brands like McDonald's, Starbucks, KFC, big Yum brands. Do you expect to see that growth of those North American brands specifically to continue in the Asia Pacific region? Right. Or do you think COVID-19 will slow that too? Right. But I'd be interested to, as an extension of that, to find out whether or not, hypothetically speaking, if there had not been a pandemic, had you predicted the growth of those brands to continue anyway, or did you feel at any point they were kind of going to reach a saturation point?
Sure. So I think that's an interesting one. So the first, so there are three parts to it. So I'll answer the first part. Would they have reached a saturation point earlier? The answer is no. I think not the saturation point. The growth rates would have gone down low. The average revenue from the existing outlets probably would not have grown as rapidly as they would have. So yes, there would have been challenges, there would have been some saturation, but no, not saturation. Now going back to the main question, and I think that's an interesting one. If I look at pre-COVID, I think operators like McDonald's, KFC's, Domino's, Pizza Hut, Starbucks, they would have continued facing an intense competition to the large-scale QSR industry in markets like India, China, Japan, and so on. And that competition would have only intensified. So they would have seen an increased pressure on their bottom line, increased pressure on their revenue lines because of these small outlets and the new outlets which are coming up, the new brands which are establishing. What has happened during COVID is, I personally think over the next 6 to 12 months or 24 months, these established brands will come out way, way stronger compared to the smaller outlets. Very simply put forward, these small QSR might not even survive this pandemic. So if you look at a market like India, 40% of small outlets might go down, very, very small outlets, which were taking the share from these outlets like McDonald's, KFC's, Domino's, Pizza Huts, and Starbucks. So I would say if these leading brands are smart, this could be a massive opportunity for them to expand in markets where they were not present, especially in a market like India, China, and so on. Huge footprint, and also push, engage with consumer a lot more, so that their average revenue from their existing outlets only increases.
Mhm.
So even with all the negatives, I think this turns out to be positive for them
Great,
over the
thank you,
long
Sumit.
term.
Excellent answer. I had a question here from Rias. He said, first of all, great presentation. Thank you, Sumit. Would be interested to know what might happen in 2 or 3 years' time when COVID restrictions were more or less lifted. So I guess this is a question that's looking at your predicted kind of version of the new normal. What will the new normal be after the COVID restrictions have been lifted, and how will that apply to the food service sector?
Right. So I think I would say over the next 2-3 years, even if COVID gets lifted, I think for us to bounce back in terms of the dining occasion, the number of dining occasion, that will take time, and that might take, God knows, 3 to 5 years also. But I think in terms of meal occasions of eating a food from outside, that might bounce back quite rapidly. So what I mean here is, people going to outlets and restaurant in terms of number of consumer might take its own long time, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, to reach the same level. But the number of consumers who are ordering food or consuming food from food service operator or outside, that will bounce back quite rapidly over the next 12 months. I think it has already started bouncing back quite massively. If you look at market like India, if you look at market like China, a lot of people are ordering food now because they've started brands have started building the trust, and people concerns are also going down. So I would say ordering food as a meal occasion will increase quite rapidly and will bounce back rapidly. But in terms of people going out to these outlets, that will take time. It will take time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sumit. Question here from Brandon, who's a consultant in Malaysia. He said, how do you believe this will impact how food is perceived? And in the changing trends in consumption, would you see that people have less understanding of food, culture, and heritage? Also, overall, how would the food service experience, in your opinion, be then based on your observation and data? So, do you think it's changing has COVID and the impact of the pandemic changed our relationship, or will it change our relationship with food and its heritage and the cultural attachments we have with food?
So I would say not really. In general, consumers are foodie and they will remain foodie. So I would say we don't expect that to change. I think their expectation in terms of food, in terms of aspects like health, hygiene, macronutrients, and the benefit it provides, those expectations will only rise. If you look at 2019, the trends like health, trends like immunity, trends like macronutrients were already gaining popularity. But what COVID has done is it has given it a kick. So these trends will gain a huge importance. Consumers are now a lot more asking a lot more questions about where the products are sourced from, what ingredient it's applied, what macronutrients this product has, what macronutrient this cuisine has. So those relationships or those expectations will only gonna go stronger. But as a consumer, we will continue loving food, and our in fact, I would say, in fact, during this whole pandemic, and the fact all of us are working from home, we all looking for a break, right? And I think the connection between food will only go strong, because that's the most easiest way to take a good break.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. A question here from Stuart. He has said, Are you seeing anything, however small, in the Asia Pacific region that is positive, that is driving growth and consumer confidence that could also be replicated in other global regions? Any particular trends that you think would transfer to North America, to Europe?
So I think I would say if you look at the whole again, if you go back a couple of months back in terms of the number of deliveries, the food order deliveries which are happening in markets like India, China, and so on, they were pretty on the lower count. I think there is a lot of social media advertising, a lot of social media engagement, a lot of digital media engagement which has happened over the last 2-3 months, which has increased the number of such occasions where people ordering foods through aggregators, and they've been able to build that trust and transparency. I would say one of the other things is, again, depending upon market to market, a lot of operators are able to capture the themes within the market. So for example, there are certain sports events which have started happening in certain markets. So if you look at, as a classic example, India is a very big cricket country nation in general, right? So we have an IPL going on. So you see a lot of advertisement during these ad breaks where they've been asked. People like Swiggy are asking consumers to order food, so they're trying to engage, trying to communicate the message. If you look at France's example, just recently French Open happened. So again, engaging consumers during these events could be an interesting way of bringing them back. Otherwise, it's a slow transformation which is happening.
Great stuff. I'm glad you're able to get a cricket reference in there, Sumit. Thank you for that. A question.
Just wait for a second. We might get a football one as well.
A question here from Albin in Singapore. He said, this is about consumer spend and average consumer spend and how it's been impacted. He said, do you have any idea of the average spend per client pre-COVID compared to today with COVID? And for, say, a similar size food service operation, are those average costs up or down?
I wouldn't have a precise number, but in fact, we have a slide. So in case, what's the name? Albin.
Albin, yeah.
Albin,
I'll connect you.
yeah, absolutely. Feel free to drop me an email. In fact, I had a slide earlier which was talking about how certain companies have lost their revenue share. So I would say the average revenue per table per consumer has in fact gone down. No questions asked. And the profitability has taken a backstage, at least for the last 6 months. That's given. Do I have a precise number? Not right now, but I'm happy to share a slide which showcases you an example of 10-20 leading operators in Asia Pacific and showcases that how they've lost revenues and somehow are bouncing back. There are some bounce backs also which has started happening.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sumit. A question here from Kerry, who's based in Australia. She said, international tourism and travel has been devastated by COVID. Will the hotel and airport industry specifically have to cater for fewer international travelers and more local customers and adapt their offers and pricing accordingly?
Absolutely. I would say a tricky one for airports because the audience they can only target is what you have on the airport, right? Unless until they start serving outside, which I don't see happening because they will not get the legal permits to start serving outside consumer. That's personally I feel. But if you look at in terms of hotels and all, I think again, yes, absolutely, they will have to do that. And that has already started happening. If you look at Starwood, like the Sheraton Group in Asia, you look at Hilton, you look at Hyatt in general, they've all started serving food to local consumers. And you're absolutely right. Getting tourism back on track, getting tourists back into these countries will take time. It could potentially be 12 to 18 months. And that's where I'm saying there are two ways of looking at this problem. One, it's a massive loss, but if all the energies are put into place looking at these local consumer, by the time this industry revamps and rebounds and the tourists are back, you will have actually two sets of consumers. One, your local consumers, which you never had because they were not consuming food, they were not ordering food, but they now in fact are. So that's your new consumer. And when the tourism comes back, that's your old consumer. So you actually can have a very strong revenue forecast coming over the next 2-3 years, if, again, as I'm saying, again, all easy said than done, if companies handle it smartly.
Fantastic, great answer. Thank you, Sumit. A question for me. You talked about the two E's that you find fundamentally important for operators, the engage and educate factors. I'd like to apply that to the subject of sustainability. And obviously, sustainability was a trend that had significant traction pre-COVID. Do you believe that sustainability now has had to take a back seat for the food service industry because of COVID, or will it actually make things like a focus on energy conservation, on food waste, managing resources efficiently and effectively, does that actually become more important because of COVID? Basically, how will sustainability, how far up the agenda has it slipped, or is it still where it should be?
So I would say, again, I would say, is it at the same level of importance at what it was in 2019? Probably not. And I think that's a fair thing, because every company, every operator has seen a massive change happening because of COVID. So I would say, in terms of scale of importance, on a scale of 1 to 10, if it was 10, 2019, it's probably 6 or 7 right now. But does that mean it has lost its importance? No, not at all. I think it will bounce back the moment we entered the next year, and there is some stability. Sustainability does require some concrete efforts. It does not happen overnight, so this will bounce back. I would say, on the contrary, areas, topics like sustainability, transparency, sourcing, they will gain a massive importance over the next 12 to 24, 36 months.
Now, I think that was the last question that we had in, and it's probably time to wrap up the session anyway. So, Sumit, I would just like to thank you again for your excellent and insightful presentation. We've had a huge amount of requests from people to get a copy of your presentation. I shall connect you with all of those people afterwards. And thank you to everyone who has registered today for your questions and for telling us where you're dialing in from. It was wonderful, I think, during that presentation to see so many inspiring examples of operators who are doing some smart things in Asia Pacific and adapting and evolving during these very dark times for our industry. I'd like to, as well as thanking Sumit for his time and his insight, I'd like to thank Woodstone for their much valued support in sponsoring today's event. I'd like to thank all of you for signing in today and for watching. And thank you again, and have a great day. Sumit, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Have a nice day all. Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.